Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are discussing and digging on the many fake news journalists. We will be exposing them for what they are, CIA assets or agents. This will be the first segment in a series that will cover the CIA and other intel agencies' infiltrations into all segments of our life, from first the fake news actors, this segment, to law enforcement, to Hollywood, to government officials. First, I'd like to talk about a certain method of operation that we must look for when we are digging these clowns. First, they are always recruited at an early age, usually in college or in the military if they served. Some, like Anderson Cooper, and other non-journalists like Peter Strzok and Lisa Page or Valerie Jarrett, are born into it. But I thought Page, Strzok, and Jarrett were of Iranian and Muslim Brotherhood connections. Well, this is true. And we must keep in mind and understand that the CIA has been controlled or has been in partnership with foreign elites, and many believe was even created out of the old OSS by the ancient European royal bloodlines to be their spy enforcement arm, their personal blackmail service. It's clear that the CIA is in some sort of cahoots with Mossad, as the connections are too many to note, and we will provide more examples of this later on in this presentation. These assets were either raised as an agent by agent parents like Barack Obama, or they are taught on the farm after recruitment at an early age, usually in high school or college, like Strzok or Snowden. Some, like the Jesuits and Dr. Fauci, will recruit at an even younger age. The Jesuits, having many choices to choose from all of their elementary and high schools that they control. They get recruited and then are groomed to go into, many times, media, and we see this when we dig and identify a potential agent, and we see that they very often seem to go into media. Like, for instance, Hugh Hefner. Many of you out there understand who he really was, and it's not the eccentric multi-millionaire who apparently had women begging to be his wife. No, Hefner was a very high-level CIA agent who had amassed massive amounts of blackmail material on prominent people from government, business, to Hollywood. His mansion was strung up with cameras, audio devices, tunnels, catching everything said or done inside that mansion. Say, with the events currently in the news about Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, does any of this sound familiar? Hefner served from 1944 to 1946 as a U.S. Army writer for a military newspaper. Hefner graduated from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign in 1949 with a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology and a double minor in creative writing and art, having earned his degree in 2.5 years. After graduation, he took a semester of graduate courses in sociology at Northwestern University, but dropped out soon after. And there's that military service, and there's that college writing class. And speaking of Ghislaine Maxwell, her father, Robert, and if you haven't seen my presentation on them, please check out the video entitled A Spooky Tale of Ghislaine Maxwell. We see her father, Robert, served in the military, and it was there that he was approached by various international intel orgs. Directly after leaving service after World War II, Robert starts his media empire by buying the Daily Mirror Group. Now back to the fake news actors. Let's first check a little history on the CIA infiltration of the American and then the world media. American journalists have long been bitterly opposed to the recruitment of reporters by U.S. intelligence agencies and the fraudulent use of journalism credentials by intelligence operatives. Since the mid-1970s, journalists and others, including some of the nation's top foreign policymakers, believed that the CIA could no longer recruit reporters as spies. They shared a widespread but inaccurate assumption that the U.S. government had banned such objectionable practices as part of a package of reforms revamping codes of conduct for covert intelligence operations adopted in response to the recommendations of the 1976 Church Committee report. In its investigation of U.S. foreign and military intelligence operations, the committee The Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, chaired by Frank Church, Democrat from Ohio, found that more than 50 American journalists had worked clandestinely as CIA agents during the Cold War era. Here is a quick excerpt from the hearing with an interview with Sig Mickelson, the president of news operations at CBS at the time.
I thought that it was a matter of real concern that planted stories intended to serve a national purpose abroad came home and were circulated here and believed here, because this would mean that the CIA could manipulate the news in the United States by channeling it through some foreign country. And we're looking at that very carefully.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal?
We do have people who submit pieces to two American journals.
Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks?
This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
At CBS, we had been contacted by the CIA. As a matter of fact, by the time I became the head of the whole News and Public Affairs operation in 1954, the ships had been established, and I was told about them and asked if I'd carry on with them. We have quite a lot of detailed information, and we will evaluate it, and we will include any evidence of wrongdoing or any evidence of impropriety in our final report and make recommendations.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to the national news services, AP and UPI?
Well, again, I think we're getting into the kind of detail, Mr. Chairman, that I'd prefer to handle in executive session.
Senator, do you think that you named the news organizations in your final report?
That remains to be decided. I think it was entirely in order for our correspondents at that time to make use of CIA agent chiefs of station and other members of the executive staff of CIA as sources of information which were useful in their assessments of world conditions.
Would you say that continues today?
Well, I would think probably for a reporter it would continue today, but because of all of the revelations of the period of the 1970s, it seems to me that a reporter's got to be much more circumspect in doing it now, or he runs the risk of at least being looked at with considerable disfavor by the public. I think you've got to be much more careful about it.
The committee's final report strongly condemned this practice and unequivocally called on the intelligence community to, quote, permit American journalists and news organizations to pursue their work without jeopardizing their credibility in the eyes of the world through covert use of them, end quote. But it didn't stay covert, however. CNN has hired James Clapper, ex-CIA boss John Brennan, candorless liar Andy McCabe, and Lisa Page as contributors. The same folks of whom were selectively leaking info to CNN in order to perpetuate their narrative of Russia, Russia, Russia. During the subsequent 2 decades, the CIA merely curtailed the practice. In 2018, Jack Schaefer, a media critic who writes for Politico, noted the potential pitfalls of networks like CNN and MSDNC having a stable of ex-spies and G-men as paid on-air contributors. But the downside of outsourcing national security coverage to the TV spies is obvious, Schaefer wrote in a February 5, 2018 article at Politico. They aren't in the business of breaking news or uncovering secrets. Their first loyalty, and this is no slam, is to the agency from which they hail. Glenn Greenwald, an editor for The Intercept who covers national security issues, echoed that sentiment during a Fox News interview in March. And not only did MSNBC and CNN use those people as their sources, they hired them as their news analysts. So if you turn on CNN or MSNBC, it was basically state TV. It was CIA TV, he told Tucker Carlson on March 26th. Let's start with the network that may just be the worst, CNN. Everyone knows this clown, Jim Acosta. Jim is an interesting background. Acosta's father arrived in the U.S. at age 11 as a refugee from Cuba 3 weeks prior to the Cuban Missile Crisis and was raised in Virginia. Acosta graduated from Annandale High School, a public senior high in Annandale, Virginia, in 1989. In 1993, he earned a bachelor's degree in mass communication with a minor in political science from James Madison University. While in school, Acosta volunteered for WXJM, the student-run radio station. He also worked as a reporter at WSVA, a local radio station. Annandale is in the same county as Langley, home of the CIA. He grew up blocks away from CIA headquarters, dear listeners. I can find no other information on his parents other than their escape from Cuba. Usually in these situations, this shows that he was rescued from the area. It is my contention that his grandfather and father may have been agents and were exfiltrated from Cuba days or hours before the Cuban Missile Crisis began. Way too coincidental for me, dear listeners. Only a connected or special person could have escaped Cuba at that time in history, folks. Just use your brains. How about this guy? Fareed Zakaria. Ladies and gentlemen, he is a doozy. From Wiki, Zakaria was born in Bombay, which is present-day Mumbai, India, to a Konkani Muslim family. His father, Rafiq Zakaria, was a politician associated with the Indian National Congress and an Islamic theologian. His mother, Fatima Zakaria, was his father's second wife. She was, for a time, the editor of the Sunday Times of India. Zakaria attended the Cathedral and John Connon School in Mumbai. He graduated with a Bachelor of Arts from Yale University in 1986, where he was president of the Yale Political Union, editor-in-chief of the Yale Political Monthly, a member of the Scroll and Key Society, and a member of the Party of the Right. Do you guys know about the Scroll and Key Society? Well, the Scroll and Key Society is a secret society founded in 1842 at Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. It is one of the oldest Yale secret societies and reputedly the most wealthy. The society is one of the Big Three societies at Yale, along with Skull and Bones and Wolf's Head Society. Each spring, the society admits 15 rising seniors to participate in its activities and carry on its traditions. Some other notable members of this cult are a Maine Cabal bloodline, Cornelius Vanderbilt. Yes, that Vanderbilt. Also James Rockefeller and Bill Clinton, among many others. Zakaria later gained a PhD in government from Harvard University in 1993, where he studied under Samuel P. Huntington and Stanuel Hoffman, as well as international relations theorist Robert Keohane. So here we have a politician father, and his mother was editor of the Indian Times, and there's that media again. And of course he ends up at Yale and then Harvard with those Marxists like Sam P. Huntington, of course. Information on this clown is limited other than general basic stuff. My question is that why, with such prominent successful parents must he move to the U.S.? Most folks leave a country during unrest and civil wars, attempting to escape the violence and the destruction and have a peaceful life somewhere. But India's quite modern, and with such successful parents, him up and leaving seems odd to me. He also has attended the Bilderberg meetings, in 2003 as a matter of fact, in Versailles. We Are Change Ohio questioned Newsweek editor Fareed Zakaria at Mount Union College in Alliance, Ohio about his attendance at the 2003 Bilderberg conference and the statements by General Hamid Gul on his CNN show. When asked about the Bilderberg conference in Versailles in 2003, Zakaria tried to play down the importance of the annual meeting, which brings together many of the most powerful business, political, and media figures from around the world. When asked to why there is a shroud of secrecy that surrounds the conference, Zakaria responded that the meetings are off the record because it allows for, quote, freer and franker discussions. In addition to his attendance at Bilderberg, Zakaria serves on the boards of the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission. The CFR is instrumental in the unification of North America and managing the destruction of American sovereignty. Ultimately, these groups aim to strip individual citizens of their legal rights. But he is just a plain old journalist, folks. I don't have to go too far into this dude for you guys. I'll just briefly mention him. Anderson Cooper, of Vanderbilt. A billionaire, an heir. He interned at the CIA. But he wanted to be a journalist for some reason. Back then, he would have had to attain an entry-level position paying the equivalent of what is about $25,000 a year today. Yeah, okay. Again, let's use our brains here. Enough of our eyes telling us something so clearly, yet we refuse to see it because some supposed authority is telling us differently. How about Christine Amanapour? Amanapour was born in the West London suburb of Ealing, the daughter of Patricia Ann and Mohammed Taghi Amanapour. Her father was Persian from Tehran. Amanapour was raised in Tehran until age 11. She is natively fluent in English and Persian and married a Jewish American. After completing the larger part of her primary education in Iran, she was sent by her parents to boarding school in England when she was 11. She attended Holy Cross Convent, an all-girls school located in Chalfont, St. Peter, Buckinghamshire, and then at age 16, New Hall School, a Roman Catholic school in Chelmsford, Essex. Christine and her family returned to England not long after the Islamic Revolution began. She has stressed that they were not forced to leave the country, but were actually returning to England due to the Iran-Iraq War. Cover. The family ultimately remained in England, finding it difficult to return to Iran. And check out her globalist awards and credentials. Amanapour is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, a member of the Board of Directors of the Committee to Protect Journalists, the Center for Public Integrity, the International Women's Media Foundation, and the Institute for War and Peace Reporting. Since April 2015, she has served as a UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador for Freedom and Expression and Journalistic Safety. Every single one of these groups is a cabal-controlled anti-American organization working towards the one world socialist government ran by the elites, folks. This next guy, I'd like some help from you all, if you've got any time. Karl Azul. He has spook written all over him. He was supposedly born in Georgia in 1989. This is about all we get on him. No parental info, no wife info, no wiki, no children. Here's the only info I can find on his personal life. It reads, Karl Azul has kept his personal life low profile. He has succeeded in keeping his personal life private and out of the spotlight. He usually doesn't talk about his private life in media and public. It's not sure either he is married or single at the present time. Yeah, he's a spook, dear listeners. Another CNN actor is named Laura Jarrett. And since we spoke about this family earlier, you'll know that her mother is an Iranian lady named Valerie Jarrett, Obama's trusted assistant. Laura Jarrett is the anchor of Early Start with Christine Romans. Previously, Jarrett was a correspondent based in Washington, D.C., covering the Justice Department and legal issues. Since joining CNN from her law practice in 2016, Jarrett has covered many significant legal stories during the Trump administration, including the travel ban, migrant family separations at the southwest border, the firing of Attorney General Jeff Sessions and FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, and high-stakes battles between the Justice Department and Capitol Hill. She had a lead role in delivering the breaking news of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's appointment to oversee the Russia investigation in May of 2017, as well as the conclusion of his work in March 2019. She also served as the lead reporter for CNN covering the Justice Department Inspector General's report on the FBI's investigation into Hillary Clinton's handling of classified information and the corruption trial of Senator Bob Menendez. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, look at all those stories where she was the official propagandist for. How many of you all knew this? Does this bother you a little bit? Another Iranian with a scrubbed internet biography that seems a little bit iffy is Padrum Jafari. Jafari was born in Tehran, Iran, to Iranian parents. In October 1993, his family emigrated from Tehran to Redmond, Washington, where he attended elementary school and high school. He moved on to college at Mesa Community College and Arizona State University. He also attended Mississippi State University, where he obtained degrees in broadcast journalism and meteorology. Jafari is fluent in Persian, Turkish, and English. Folks, should we not question the amount of Iranians working in the media and at CNN specifically? Is it racist to point out this fact? Isn't it a bit out of the ordinary to have so many journalists from a small Islamic country that doesn't even have diplomatic relations with the U.S.? I mean, Iran certainly is different than if all these actors were coming from Germany or England or even Japan. But to have so many come from Iran? It must be pointed out, dear listeners, and I'll be the one to do it, and to be called a racist, as those things don't bother me because I think, as do most of you all. Here's a good one. Dana Swartz, or now known as Dana Bash. Bash was born to a Reformed Jewish family in Manhattan. Her father was an ABC News producer who served as the senior broadcast producer for Good Morning America, and her mother was an author and educator in Jewish studies. Here's the meat. From 1998 to 2007, Bash was married to Jeremy Bash, who would become CIA Chief of Staff and Department of Defense Chief of Staff under President Barack Obama. In 2008, she married fellow CNN correspondent John King. Bash gave birth to a son, Jonah, in June of 2011 and separated from King in 2012. Check this one out. Arwa Damon from Wiki. Arwa Damon birth stated as simply 1977. I suppose nobody has ever asked her or her employer what her birth date is or where she was born. Nobody attempted to put it into Wiki, nothing. She is an American journalist who is a senior international correspondent for CNN based in Istanbul. From 2003, she covered the Middle East as a freelance journalist before joining CNN in 2006. She is also president and founder of INARA, a humanitarian organization that provides medical treatment to refugee children from Syria. Born in Boston to American father and Syrian mother, Damon spent her early childhood years in Wayland, Massachusetts. Damon is the granddaughter of Muhsin al-Barazi, the former Syrian Kurd Prime Minister of Syria, who was executed in the August 1949 Syrian coup d'etat. At the age of 6, Damon and her family moved to Morocco, followed by Istanbul, Turkey. 3 years later, where her father was a teacher and middle school director at Robert College. He went from there to a school in Izmir and was then headmaster of the American Community School at Beirut from 2003 until his retirement in 2013. Damon skipped 6th grade and graduated with honors from Robert College at the age of 16. She then spent a gap year with her aunt and uncle in Morocco learning show jumping before moving to the U.S. to attend Skidmore College in Saratoga Springs, New York. She graduated with honors in 1999 with a double major in French and biology and a minor in international affairs. She is fluent in Arabic, French, Turkish, and English, having grown up speaking all 4 languages. Normal? Before becoming a reporter, Damon worked for a New York-based Turkish textile company. Skipped 6th grade. Did you guys catch that? And still somehow graduated at 16. And re-listen to those academic credentials too, folks. Fluent in 4 languages, double major graduate with honors, and she decides to become a reporter. Entry level at the time, depending on the area and being generous, say $50,000. And I'm supposed to believe this. Check out some of the things she was in charge of covering. She covered the Iraq elections and the events before and after during the establishment of the current Iraqi government. Starting in December 2010, Damon covered the Arab Spring from Libya and Egypt. Remember that? During the Syrian civil war, ladies and gentlemen, Damon traveled multiple times to Syria and to refugee camps for Syrians. Folks, she was a main source of the things the media told us about those camps, if you all remember. And listen to this one. After the 2012 Benghazi attack, she was one of the first journalists to arrive at the scene. Listen up. She recovered slain ambassador J. Christopher Stevens' personal diary. And those who understand the true story of the events of Benghazi can only imagine the info that may have been in that personal diary, folks. Damon covered the international military intervention against ISIL on numerous occasions, dating to the beginning of the conflict. Damon often shows interest in reporting on nature, environmental protection, and similar themes. In 2018, she accompanied a Greenpeace group to Antarctica and made a feature out of it. And her charity, INARA, the International Network for Aid, Relief, and Assistance, is a humanitarian aid 501c3 nonprofit organization that was co-founded by Arwa Damon in 2015 in Beirut, Lebanon. And I have to find that other founder, that person's name. INARA provides medical services for children who have been wounded in war zones. It also provides rehabilitation treatment for its beneficiaries. The organization focuses on refugee children from Syria. As of August 2018, INARA has managed to provide treatment to over 150 refugee children. And one final tidbit on her. Damon and CNN were sued by 2 employees of the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, claiming that on July 19, 2014, an intoxicated Damon bit them. Damon acknowledged the incident and apologized. Bit them, ladies and gentlemen, bit them. Hadas Gold, media and business correspondent. Gold was born to a Jewish family in Tel Aviv, Israel, the daughter of Daphne and Yoram Gold. Her father is an Israeli Defense Forces veteran and project manager for a drug company. Her mother is a Hebrew teacher. She moved to Scottsdale, Arizona when she was 3 and is a 2006 graduate of Desert Mountain High School. It doesn't say why her father, working for the IDF, up and moved them to Arizona when she was 3. Open your eyes, folks. Let's head on over to MSDNC and see what we can find. One that pops out is a lady named Melissa Francis. She is currently the co-host of After the Bell weekday afternoons with Connell McShane. Francis was a child actor whose first gig was at 6 months old when she did a Johnson & Johnson shampoo commercial. From there she did some other stuff, most notably some Little House on the Prairie and St. Elsewhere, prior to going into fake news journalism. Here's the problem with Francis, and you can try this yourselves. She seems to have been scrubbed up from the net pretty well. Nowhere can I find a parent's name, a mother or a father. The only thing about her childhood that we can find other than acting is that she was born December 12th, 1972 in LA. That is all. No elementary school info, no high school info. Only says she was born in 1972 and then shoots right to the info about graduating Harvard in 1995. For me, this is a big red flag. Mika Brzezinski works at MSNBC. Now, we won't waste any time here on her. In case you guys aren't familiar, just do a quick search on her father, Zig Brzezinski. There shouldn't be any debate on whether or not Mika is intel. She clearly is. Monica Novotny is another one. She's like Melissa Francis, but a little worse. Monica's almost completely scrubbed from the internet. We can't find out where she was born, let alone what year or month. Nothing. Her early life info on the net begins with simply, quote, Novotny earned a Bachelor's of Arts in Mass Communication from the University of California, Las Vegas, graduating Phi Beta Kappa. No parents, no nothing. Okay, how about ABC? How about Matt Gutman? He's an American reporter for ABC News. He's the network's chief national correspondent and appears on various programs for the network. Matthew A. Gutman was born on December 5th, 1977 in Princeton, New Jersey. Gutman attended prestigious Newark Academy where he was honored as a scholar athlete football player. He graduated from Williams College in 2000. Okay, pretty straightforward, nothing weird. He graduated college in 2000. Then, when you go to his career portion of the wiki, it says this. Gutman started as a freelance reporter in Argentina in late 2000. His first published articles was for the now defunct English language Buenos Aires Daily. Listen to me, ladies and gentlemen. He moved to Argentina directly after college, with no job offer there, no job lined up, but to be a freelance journalist, to hang out around town and write stories about things that he thinks might be newsworthy, and then send those around to area newspapers and hope that they'll publish it, and then he can get a small payment for that. Come on, man. You expect me to believe this crap? From there, he then worked for the Jerusalem Post based in Israel from 2001 to 2005, covering the Israeli-Palestinian conflicts before joining ABC News Radio in 2006. Gutman lived in the Middle East for nearly 8 years, covering most major conflicts, including the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, Syria, and Lebanon, and fulfilling dispatches in nearly every country in that region. Had I been able to find any sort of parental info on Gutman, I may have been able to find a direct CIA or Mossad connection, but there is no more info that I can find. Here's one you all know, Ted Koppel. His parents were refugees from Germany who fled the Nazis. The family eventually immigrated in order to give Ted a better life. Now you think he would love democracy and freedom and go to bat for it, not spread fake news, fake narratives, cabal narratives. Upon leaving Nightline and ABC, Koppel formed a 3-year partnership with Discovery Communications as managing editor of the Discovery Channel. While at Discovery, Koppel produced several lengthy documentaries on a variety of subjects, including a 2008 4-hour, what I call, propaganda piece called Ministries on China, which Koppel, quote, ranks with some of the best work that he is most proud of over the years, end quote. The 4-part documentary called The People's Republic of Capitalism is an extensive look at the fast-changing country. It takes a look at the role of Chinese consumers in the growing yet communist economy. And if you haven't seen it, don't bother. It's simply a propaganda piece about how awesome the communist Chinese are and how great they have been able to integrate a communist/capitalistic economy. All lies and propaganda, folks. Communism is communism. Believe me when I tell you that. There is no fusion of communism and capitalism, folks. What about CBS? Sharon Elizabeth Alfonso is an Emmy Award-winning American journalist and correspondent for 60 Minutes. She made her debut appearance on 60 Minutes on March 1st, 2015. Her early life and education says only this. Alfonso attended high school in McLean, Virginia. She graduated with honors from the University of Mississippi in Oxford in 1994, where she was a James Love Scholar. McLean, Virginia. Right by that CIA headquarters. How about a birth date, an age, a parent, a high school, an elementary school? Nothing. And how come if these people aren't born in Iran, they're born right next to a CIA headquarters or grew up there? Here is Serena Elshow. Although not a bloodline family like the Vanderbilts and Anderson Cooper, however, she is a Lehman heir, Lehman of Lehman Brothers Bank. Serena Elshow, born October 13, 1970, is an American broadcast journalist known for her work at MTV News and CBS. Elshow was born in New York City, the daughter of author and botanist Siri von Rees and Arthur Elshow, a member of the Lehman banking family. Her mother is of half Finnish and half Swedish ancestry, and her father is of Jewish ancestry. After her parents divorced, 2-year-old Serena and 2 siblings were raised by their mother. Elshow has 4 siblings. Her brother, Arthur Goodhart Elshow Jr., was married to journalist Rula Jabriel, and her sister, Emily Elshow, is married to former journalist and NYPD Deputy Commissioner John Miller. So she's a journalist, while her brother and sister both married journalists. Okay. And John Miller ain't just any journalist, folks. He is known intel. And here's a brief overview of this spook. His wiki says for birth date, simply, born 1958 or 1959. He is the Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence and Counterterrorism of the NYPD, and the internet can't tell us what year he was born. He is the former Associate Deputy Director of National Intelligence for Analytic Transformations in Technology. Prior to that, he was an Assistant Director of Public Affairs for the Federal Bureau of Investigation, where he was the Bureau's national spokesman. Miller is also a former ABC News reporter and anchorman, perhaps best known for conducting a May 1998 interview with Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan. John Miller was named a senior correspondent for CBS News on October 17, 2011. In this capacity, Miller reported for all CBS News platforms and broadcasts, including CBS This Morning and occasionally for 60 Minutes. Miller is the son of Lucinda and John J. Miller, a syndicated columnist and freelance writer whose range of roles included Hollywood gossip, columnist, foreign correspondent, Broadway critic, crime investigator, and political pundit. His father was also a close friend of Luciano crime family boss Frank Costello, and his wife Loretta was Miller's godmother. Miller began work as a journalist in 1983 for WNEW, a local New York City television station. From 85 to 94, he worked as an investigative journalist for WNBC, another local New York television station. During his tenure at the station, he conducted several interviews with John Gotti. From 1994 to 1995, he served as Deputy Police Commissioner of New York City, where he was the chief spokesman or propagandist for the NYPD. Miller worked as an ABC News correspondent beginning in 1995. Using an Al-Qaeda agent in London as an intermediary, Miller was able to make contact with Mohammed Atef to request an interview with Osama bin Laden in May of 1998. Miller was instructed to travel to Islamabad, Pakistan, and was escorted over the Afghanistan-Pakistan border to meet bin Laden in a camp near Kandahar. He asked bin Laden questions that were translated in Arabic by an Al-Qaeda translator, but bin Laden's answers were not translated, so Miller was not immediately aware of what bin Laden was saying during the interview. Yeah, right. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been played like a fiddle for quite some time now. And I don't know about you, but I'm sort of fed up with it. During his tenure at ABC, Miller also covered the September 11, 2001 attacks, where he sat alongside Peter Jennings, another fake news actor, for the duration of the day, listening in to radio conversations from the FBI, FDNY, and NYPD, informing Jennings and the viewers of their content. In January 2002, Miller took the post of co-anchor with Barbara Walters of the ABC News program 2020. In January 2003, he left ABC News to rejoin Bratton, who by then was at the Los Angeles Police Department. Miller served as the police department's bureau chief for the Counterterrorism and Criminal Intelligence Bureau, which included the Major Crimes Division and the Emergency Services Division and the Special Investigations Section. While there, Miller launched Project Archangel, which included the Automated Critical Asset Management System, among other platforms, and which has been adopted by other cities and states for ongoing risk assessment of potential terrorist targets. Miller was also one of the original designers of the Los Angeles Joint Regional Intelligence Center, which combines intelligence and analysis for the LAPD, LA Sheriffs, and the FBI. In September 2005, Miller became the Assistant Director for Public Affairs at the FBI in Washington, D.C. In this position, he was tasked with overseeing the FBI's internal and external communications, including relations with the news media and handling of fugitive publicity, community relations, and other communications support. Miller also established an employee communications unit to build stronger internal communications to the Bureau's 31,000 employees. Among his collateral duties was to serve on the strategic execution team to establish performance measurement standards for intelligence operations across the FBI's 56 field offices. The system was adapted from the CompStat process used by major police departments and was overseen by then FBI Director Robert Mueller. In 2011, Miller left his position at the FBI to work as a senior correspondent for CBS News. In 2013, he reported on the Inside the NSA episode of 60 Minutes, which was criticized for justifying the organization's spying on American citizens. In December 2013, Miller announced that he would be resigning from CBS in order to take a position as the Deputy Commissioner for Intelligence and Counterterrorism with the NYPD. Miller rejoined William Bratton, who had earlier been announced as the new New York Police Department Commissioner by Mayor Bill de Blasio. And you see how that's all done, folks? Jumping in and out from high-level law enforcement into journalism and vice versa. Now the circular reporting that began the Russian collusion delusion becomes more clear. How they use their supposed sources, etc. Their sources are merely agents. Maureen Maurer, host of 48 Hours, caught my eye as I immediately thought of Kid Love production CEO Bill Maurer. These two could be related, however, Maureen's biography doesn't show who her parents are or when she was born. It said that Maurer was born in the state of Michigan, just outside of Detroit. Her birth parents were high school seniors, unable to provide for Maureen, and subsequently gave her up for adoption. In 1991, she graduated from Loyola University with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Communications. Folks, we know all about a lot of their child stars. We know they like to traffic kids, and we know they have their filthy tentacles into the foster care system, something awful. It makes one wonder about Maureen. And speaking of them, always seeming to be involved with kids, Maurice Alberto Rocca, born January 28, 1969, is an American humorist, journalist, and actor. He is a correspondent for CBS Sunday Morning. Mo Rocca got his start in television behind the scenes, writing and producing several children's TV shows. His first work in front of the camera came as a correspondent for news satire show The Daily Show with, at that time, Jon Stewart, who stepped down for some reason directly after Trump won the presidency from 1998 to 2003. He played a similar role as a satirical correspondent for The Tonight Show with Jay Leno from 2004 to 2008. Rocca was born in Washington, D.C. His mother immigrated from Bogota, Colombia in 1956 at age 28, and his father was a third-generation Italian-American from Leominster, Massachusetts. He attended Georgetown Preparatory School, a Jesuits' boys' school in North Bethesda, Maryland. And there's those Jesuits again. And take some time, if you haven't, dig on this logo, folks. The symbolism in it is extraordinary. He graduated from Harvard University in 1991 with a Bachelor's of Arts degree in literature. Now, folks, I don't want you to get the wrong impression of me, but from my experience digging on these devils in the intel community, a few things always seem to pop up. We very often seem to find that the asset or the asset's parents, who are also assets, emigrate from other countries. Many war-torn or purposefully destabilized at the time, like Jim Acosta escaping Cuba 3 days before a CIA intervention called the Cuban Missile Crisis. Or guys like London Mayor Sadiq Khan, who we will speak about in the segment on CIA infiltration into world governments, whose great-grandfather was king of Afghanistan. His grandparents migrated from Lucknow in United Provinces, British India, to Pakistan following the partition of India in 1947, another Cabal intel op. His father, Amanullah, and mother, Sairan, arrived in London from Pakistan in 1968. Then there's Christina Amanapour. Her and her family were in Iran during the revolution and fled just days after it began. And here is Khan's great-grandfather, the first king of Afghanistan. Do you still think that these folks didn't maintain control after all the monarchs fell, after the world wars? I need you to think, ladies and gentlemen, think. If you enjoyed this presentation, please like, share, and subscribe. And please consider supporting this channel on Patreon. The link is in the description. Keep an eye out for the next video in this series on CIA infiltration into our law enforcement. Thank you for watching.